guys, so a lot of people have been tweeting me a link to this guy's video who made a horribly bigoted video on transgender people.
Okay, right off the bat, the first thing that Jaclyn does is label Hunter a bigot in classical social injustice warrior style. It's always you must be a bigot if you disagree with the special victim classes of SJWs. We aren't even 10 seconds into her video and she's already firing off one of the typical buzzwords social injustice warriors like her just love to throw out. She's already starting off on the wrong foot.
It was one of those things that was extremely cringy for me to get through and watch, but it's a conversation that I've been seeing happen on a lot of different people's videos, not just this guy's, but I'm going to respond and hopefully it covers a lot of the topics that people have been thinking about lately.
Man, I'm so bored. What can I do that's really disgusting but is socially acceptable for some reason and will get me lots of attention?
I know, you can post a horribly bigoted video on YouTube that makes an entire group of people feel like they're not as good as you.
First of all, there goes that word bigot again. Let's keep it real. If I had a penny for every time a social injustice warrior used that word alone, not even counting the list of other buzzwords they like to throw out like racist, hate, words that end with phobe, etc., I'd be so wealthy that these same SJWs would be complaining that I have too much money that I'm not sharing and that I need to be taxed to death so they can go to college for free and live and learn in their safe spaces to throw out accusations like me being too privileged. And second, where is SJWs like you, Jaclyn, calling out the barring of a claim to be transgender woman in Tempe, Arizona from their Islamic Community Center? A ton of groups who claim to fight for LGBTQ rights were dead silent on this, including much of the mainstream media and even the likes of the ACLU. I pointed out this kind of hypocrisy before from your fellow social injustice warrior Lacey Green, and you are yet another example of this hypocrisy, probably based on willful ignorance. If you truly care for LGBTQ rights, you'd call out the well-known anti-LGBTQ behavior in Islam and call them out as bigots as well by your own logic. But why am I even surprised at this point with social injustice warriors like yourself? The depths of your hypocrisy is just laughably pathetic.
Meanwhile, you can make yourself feel like you're smarter and better than all of them, and get lots of attention.
You know, Jaclyn, I'd take you a bit more seriously here if you were equally consistent in saying the same stuff against those in Islam blatantly anti-LGBTQ. But all you're really doing is once again resorting to the same social injustice warrior responses, treating those people who are critical of transgenderism as those who are automatically belittling claim to be trans people, instead of taking a moment to step back and actually listen to what we are saying. Perhaps you find there is actually a genuine concern if you put aside the politically incorrect talking points for a second before reacting. Think about it.
I got it. Please, call me Jaclyn.
That sounds too much like Jaclyn. So his bright idea, his light bulb moment was to put a wig on, put some shitty makeup on, and say, hey, look at me, I'm transgender, and offend a bunch of people. Brilliant.
No matter if you tell the truth or not, people are going to get offended. You social injustice warrior types tend to think you have the right not to be offended. Well, I have news for you. You're dead wrong. If something you social injustice warrior types do offend someone, it's perfectly reasonable and justified, but it must be morally offensive if your side's the offended party. That is so typical of you people. And yes, I said you people. I find that as something else to cry about and get triggered and offended by.
Actually, no, it's even worse than that. He's going to make a video where he assumes the role of an expert on all issues regarding transgender rights, and he's going to tell you the truth.
Hey guys, Hunter Avallone here, and I really hope you're ready for this video, cause I know I am. Let's begin. Truth is, being transgender is not normal.
Oh God, I have been making videos on LGBT rights for a long time, for years and years and years, and this is one of the arguments that I hear regurgitated all the time. It's not normal, you guys. And I'm so irritated. I'm so tired of hearing this said like it's this fact of just brilliance that everyone's gonna be like, oh, you're right, it's not normal. The fuck does being normal mean? Should we just all go by your standards? That's like the bar we should set?
Here's the problem with social injustice warriors like you, Jaclyn. First of all, y'all tend to think things like abortion, which is killing your own children, is something which should be treated as normal, tolerable behavior in our society. Yet when people disagree with your worldview, it's trying to set some arbitrary bar of what normal means. Again, it's about constantly playing by the rules of social injustice wars, otherwise you'll fall into the many buzzwords they'll attempt to use against you. And secondly, the issue isn't necessarily about who sets the bar of normal. The fact of the matter is we do, in fact, have a standard of what's normal and what isn't normal in our society, and said bar necessarily has to be set by a person or persons. For example, it's obvious most people think things like rape would not be considered as something as what should be normal, and by normal I mean permissible in our society. And no matter what kind of behavior we're talking about, it's going to be put under either the category of normal or non-normal. So again, it isn't necessarily about who sets the bar of normality, but what is the basis as to which things are categorized as normal or non-normal. You need to address the basis, Jaclyn, not simply whine a bellyache about who sets the bar. This whining of yours is getting quite ridiculous and embarrassing.
Oh, Hunter thinks that this is not normal, and Hunter thinks that this is normal. Now we know how to live our lives. Thank you, Hunter. You can say something is uncommon, but just because it doesn't happen often doesn't mean that it's not normal.
That's absolutely correct, Jaclyn, and the burden of proof is on you to present the case that transgenderism is normal, not simply through an emotional tirade absent of any logical reasoning whatsoever.
Normal is just an arbitrary standard that you are setting that no one else honestly could give a shit about. But unfortunately, a lot of people apply this standard of normalcy to people, and if you don't fit into their category of what they think is socially acceptable, they judge you for it.
Okay, Jaclyn, let's not play this game of you can't judge people nonsense. Everyone judges, including you. You've judged Hunter in this rant of yours by calling him a bigot, so stop the hypocrisy. That is making a judgment call upon his character. Look up what judging means in the dictionary. If you say someone is a good person, you are still judging them even then. The real pertinent issue here is that people don't like to be judged negatively. And furthermore, we have now even pedophiles like Todd Nickerson being championed by one of your social injustice warrior giants at Salon.com simply because he doesn't act physically on his urges to molest children. Would you claim it was wrong for us to judge him as well? Salon certainly seems to think so, which you've also been noticeably silent about Salon's backing of him. Your hypocrisy continues to become more and more evident. I'm going to let the next minute and a half to 2 minutes or so play before I make my next point.
And whenever it comes to people differing on their sexual orientation or the way that they identify, whenever it comes to gender, there are a lot of factors obviously that come into play whenever discussing these things, but for the sake of argument, I'm going to stick to biological arguments, because whenever it comes to talking about what's normal or natural, there are biological reasons that go behind a lot of these things that I think are important. I made a video actually on this about I think it was 4 years ago. I hate watching my old videos because a lot of them I used to be religious back then, so I would say, as a Christian, I think this, and this is an example of that. But even whenever I was religious, I wasn't bigoted or closed-minded enough to know that gender is not something that we can define by just X, Y, XX chromosomes. There are a lot of different things that happen during fetal development that can determine whether or not you are born female or male. There are people out there who have XX chromosomes that are born as a man. There are people out there that are XY that are born as a woman biologically. Something could happen where the mother produces extra testosterone, or she doesn't produce enough testosterone, or the baby has an insensitivity to testosterone. You never know what could happen. So I'm gonna play you a clip from that video I made 4 years ago. Don't judge me.
And I gave you the example already of extra testosterone being introduced. You can also have XY, which would be a man, and the baby has some kind of insensitivity or inability to process the testosterone that is there. So then even though they're XY, they're born a full-fledged female.
So that's me about 4 years ago. I was in my first year of med school, I believe, and I filmed this video outside. I was in the Midwest on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I believe you can hear cows mooing in the background, so not my best video.
Alright, here Jaclyn appeals to the rare cases of those born with certain issues being male with XX chromosomes and female with XY chromosomes, as well as at times an additional chromosome added. She employs the exception fallacy. Don't allow social injustice warriors to mislead you with appealing to these rare cases out of millions upon billions of those in which we do in fact see an overwhelming consistency of XX chromosomes indicating a female and the XY chromosomes indicating a male. We say such parents define what a man and woman is, not because we literally think every case without fail will conclude we are dealing with a biological man and woman, but because such pairings are reliable the overwhelming majority of the time, in which we can confidently argue XX equals female and XY equals male as a rule. We go with what's reliable, not with what isn't, and we cannot simply argue against the reliability to a particular rule because rare exceptions may happen. That's just like arguing that just because rare exceptions occur in which people may be born without legs and use their hands instead to walk, that we can therefore conclude it is incorrect to define walking by means of bipedalism. The exception that some humans are born without legs and use their hands to walk doesn't make it incorrect to define walking by means of bipedalism, as bipedalism is the reliable means in which we measure such. In the same way, the fact that rare instances may occur in which a male may end up as XX or female may end up as XY doesn't make it incorrect to define gender by means of chromosomes. It doesn't necessarily follow that a reliable rule is invalidated because exceptions may occur. Our social injustice war friends are going to have to do much harder than appealing to rare exceptions. So you need to stop the nonsense, Jaclyn. Try harder.
But at least I wasn't closed-minded, even though I said this.
You say God created man and God created woman. God created a lot of other variations in between too. And in my personal opinion, that's how they were supposed to be.
No, the Bible made it very clear he made a man and a woman, and there is no sufficient evidence biblically to conclude there is some in-between nonsense she was referring to about 4 years prior. Even when she claimed to be more religious, she was still way off the mark. This is going to offend at least some people out there, which I don't really give a crap about your feelings, but it seems to me she was nothing more than a wolf in sheep's clothing, which eventually led to her full transition to full-on atheism. She's really not any different than others who claim to be believers and ended up leaving the faith. But I digress. Back to the video.
I went there. God made you that way. I do cringe at some of my older videos. And there are a lot of mistakes that I made in that video watching it back, but that was my best attempt at trying to be open-minded and use biological facts to back me up. But I do highly suggest that you seek the advice of trained professionals in this area. I know PZ Myers and I had our falling out years ago, but he is extremely educated in the field of embryology, and I know this because I've seen him debate people using that knowledge, and he's absolutely killed it because some people just do not know how to science. So if you want more details to that topic, I will leave a link to an article that he wrote on the pathways to sex in the description below. One interesting thing that he said was, while testosterone is a signal that regulates male ducts, testosterone must be converted into DHT, the signal that regulates development of the external genitalia. Defects in the enzyme responsible for this conversion can lead to individuals with male internal plumbing, including testes, but female external genitalia. Sex isn't all or nothing, but a whole series of switches. And it gets way more complicated than that in the article, but I did want to quote that one part because it kind of goes along with what I was saying before. It is not just this simple thing that you can look at XXXY. Chromosomes don't say everything.
This goes back to what I said earlier. Exceptions do not necessarily invalidate a rule, and XX to define a female and XY to define a male is what's a reliable measuring stick. Rare cases do not necessitate doing the validation of that rule. Social injustice wars like Jaclyn tend to argue technicalities and semantics to justify their worldview, so keep an eye out for such tactics and do not let them run with such nonsense.
Sorry, but the idea that you're a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body is simply not normal. When people get their body parts hacked off and replaced with new ones during a sex change, that simply is not normal.
Getting body parts hacked off? I mean, come on, could you word that in a way that suits your agenda even more? Do you talk about plastic surgeries like that? That girl got a nose job. She got part of her face hacked off. No one talks like this. And let's not forget to mention that a lot of people who are transgender don't even get surgery. So what about them?
You seriously need to get over yourself, Jaclyn, with your blatant hypocrisy. You're getting all up in arms about Hunter saying hacked off body parts. It didn't seem to mind when you acted like this towards pro-lifers, remember?
A lot of people that I talk to automatically have this, oh my god, you love abortions reaction? And it's like,
No, I don't have to like abortions to support a woman's right to have an abortion. They're not exactly synonymous. And then they proceed to show you some really sad commercial with some girl who looks like she just got the shit beat out of her, and she's sad and she's crying and there's black makeup running down her face, and the caption's something like, "I had an abortion and now my life is ruined." Or it's even better, and the commercial's like, "My mom could have aborted me and then I wouldn't have been here, but she didn't. She didn't abort me, and now I'm here and I'm living and breathing because she didn't fucking have an abortion, and I am pro-life because of that." That's why I'm pro-life. Otherwise, I could have been non-existent, and I would have been really sad about that because I would have somehow known that I wasn't existent.
So Jaclyn, you have no basis to lecture anyone about decorum when you severely like any yourself and find it amusing to poke fun at those who were glad they weren't murdered in the womb. And you have the nerve to get on people like Hunter who disagree with you about bigotry. The depths of your hypocrisy is incredibly sickening. And in regards to your point about surgery, it was clearly just an example Hunter was giving of abnormal behavior, not claiming that all transgender people get surgery.
Despite what the left-wing hypocrites have to say, I don't think we should just shrug our shoulders and accept this very strange behavior. I think we should work together and get these people help.
And get these people help. Yeah, you really care about helping them since you made a video so hateful. I'm sure you really care about their general well-being. I posted something about this issue on my Facebook and Twitter earlier today, and I had people even there responding about how they feel these people need help and that we need more developments in the field of psychology so we can figure them out. And you know what? I'm not an expert on this topic, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below, but based off of what I know, the little that I do know about embryology, it's not just a mental thing. You don't think your way into this. There's biology that goes behind it. No amount of conversion therapy is going to change how you developed as a fetus.
But therein lies the point, Jaclyn. We aren't just dealing with transgender people whom were allegedly born biologically a certain way, but we are also dealing with those who are in fact aware of their biology and simply want to carry themselves as the opposite sex, i.e. Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner. I could be wrong on this, but you seem to frame the issue as if to suggest all transgender people we are talking about are dealing with legitimate biological issues in which they are struggling to find out if they are a man or a woman, which isn't true at all. But let's continue on and addressing more of your nonsense.
And regardless of that, conversion therapy has been proven to not work.
This is just blatantly false, and I'll show you a clip which was from Black Pigeon Speaks video on this subject.
Also echoing the research thus stated are pharmacotherapy studies that are 20 years old that used the drug Pimozide on a cross-dressing man with a strong wish to undergo a sex change. The outcome of the study, as far as I know, has never been mentioned in the mainstream media, or at least I've never heard about it between the cacophony of how Caitlyn Jenner is so brave and so beautiful. But there was an excellent response to Pimozide 2 milligrams daily with a cessation of both cross-dressing and the wish for sex reassignment. When after 1 year the dose was reduced to 1 milligram daily, there was a rapid return of the cross-dressing and the wish for sex reassignment. An increase in the dose again led to a remission, which has been maintained since then. And the conclusion was that pharmacotherapy with Pimozide should be considered in cases of doubtful gender dysphoria.
So Jaclyn, what you just said is actually 100% incorrect. Let's continue on.
Are we still in that mindset that gay people aren't right? Do they need to go through conversion therapy too? It's brutal. Google some of the things that they do to people in conversion therapy and tell me you don't think it's really fucked up.
Okay, I'm not claiming that nobody has done some messed up stuff with gay people regarding conversion therapy, but it's not like there is some witch hunt to find gays and force them to convert. Whomever would seek such therapy more than likely chose to get it, and there are people who legitimately want to help these people who are behind the conversion therapy programs, and there are success stories like this at peoplechange.com. However, social injustice warriors like you, Jaclyn, are either intentionally ignorant or you know these social stories exist and you are deliberately misleading people for your own personal agenda, and it's absolutely disgusting to me.
And if a transgender person chooses to get gender reassignment surgery, it's not something that they can just walk into a clinic and get. They have to go through extensive therapy to determine that that's really the best choice for them. Doctors have to determine that this surgery would be beneficial to the person's mental health. This is something that's evaluated. They have to get letters of recommendation. It's an entire process. It's not just, well, I want to get body parts hacked off today. Put yourself in their shoes. This is something that frustrates me so much, that people lack the empathy. They lack the ability to imagine what it would be like to feel that way. They can't imagine it, therefore they don't even think about somebody else's feelings. Well, I don't have to deal with it, therefore it's not a problem.
Alright, Jaclyn, now you're just going on this huge emotional tirade. It seems to me there are very few people who would actually act the way you say, and I see no reason to believe Hunter believes in that sort of behavior you're assuming onto him, but quite often emotions cloud the judgment of social injustice warrior types like you, Jaclyn.
In 2015, a Johns Hopkins psychiatrist named Dr. Paul McHugh says that being transgender is a mental disorder and a sex change is biologically impossible.
Dr. Paul McHugh, well, let's look up this guy and see what the internet has to say about him. Oh, check it out! Meet the doctors social conservatives depend on to justify anti-transgender hate. Of course this guy would get mentioned. Apparently he has something against the entire LGBT community and he's been widely debunked.
This is just embarrassing. First of all Jaclyn did was point to a Think Progress article claiming that he was debunked. But this widely debunked source leads to one article on transadvocate.com about 2 years ago written by Marie Bragg, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. If you look up who she is, it's said that she's a Detroit-based genetics researcher and PhD student and previously worked as a certified medical laboratory professional. She has presented her research at several national level conferences and has been published in major medical journals, which is interesting because despite these claims, I found no peer-reviewed articles from her when I did a search on her and found no critical peer-reviewed analysis published of her criticisms of Dr. Paul McHugh's work. The only thing I found is her opinion piece on Trans Advocate. Dr. Paul McHugh has over 100 peer-reviewed articles published to date, and she has 0. The highly favored liberal scholarly mainstream circles would have more than likely long found her to be credible and would have had her claims widely shown all over the place in peer review if her analysis was really that solid to refute McHugh's findings. And secondly, she once again goes back to the emotional tirade social injustice warrior talking points of people like Dr. Paul McHugh being a bigot because you don't agree with them and simply pointing to an alleged hater of trans people to justify bigotry. By her logic, I could point to Think Progress, a liberal medium, and Marie Bragg, also a liberal LGBTQ rights person, being a transgender advocate to justify Jaclyn's hatred of those who disagree with her views. But where does that get us? Nowhere. I'm not going to assume that Jaclyn is necessarily a hater because she doesn't hold my view, nor should she do the same to anyone else. Again, it's about emotion, not facts, logic, or evidence when you're dealing with social injustice warriors. Just flat out embarrassing Jaclyn entirely.
The entire notion that gender is just a social construct and you can pick and choose your gender is a bunch of Tumblr bullcrap.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. You cannot pick and choose your gender. It's something that is inside of you and you cannot change it. Glad we agree on something, dipshit.
And Jaclyn continues to go even further downhill with her emotionally inflated tirade. I know I said I'm not going to assume Jaclyn is a hater because she doesn't hold my view, but I think at this point we can justifiably conclude Jaclyn herself is in fact full of hate, calling Hunter, and I quote, a dipshit and all.
This absolutely ridiculous idea opens the door to all kinds of insanity.
Oh, here we go. Slippery slope fallacy.
For example, this 52-year-old father ditched his family and now identifies as a 6-year-old girl.
I can't deny I was married. I can't deny I have children. But I've moved forward now and I've gone back to being a child.
Even worse, this 20-year-old Norwegian nutcase identifies as a cat now.
Jeg Nano, 7 år. Jeg har vært katt hele livet.
You think she's crazy right now? Just wait until you see her after she's eaten the catnip. Because of this ridiculous gender notion, you are opening the door to insanity.
Oh, okay, that's how we're gonna do it. All right, let me try this. Let me be you for a second. Oh my God, so I was at this barbecue with this girl, Jaclyn Glenn, and she wouldn't eat the meat, okay? She wouldn't eat the steak, and she wouldn't eat the chicken because she cared about animals, and she ate tofu. Ew, I mean, that is just not normal. People were meant to eat meat. What she's doing is not normal, and it's not natural. I mean, if you're gonna eat tofu and not eat what I think you should be eating, that just opens the door to eating a bunch of other crazy shit. She doesn't want to eat animals, so what is she gonna do? Start eating inanimate objects? That's what's next. Slippery slope fallacy.
Okay, Jaclyn here has made a common error typically made on the internet in confusing two things. Confusing a slippery slope fallacy with a slippery slope argument. A slippery slope fallacy is a causal fallacy, such as something like, if you have children, eating candy bars the majority of the time will teach your children bad habits. Then your children will grow up eating candy bars, doing the same bad things, and pass their bad habits on to their children. Before you know it, you'll have generations of people with bad habits of eating candy bars all the time. That is a causal fallacy. Then there is the slippery slope argument. A slippery slope argument is an argument, but not a fallacy. For example, there are policies which forbid things like smoking and drinking alcohol inside of public libraries. However, if we were to suppose such policies were abolished, there would be a legitimate concern of problems which will follow as a result of rules against those things being abolished. In this instance, we can legitimately argue one thing will lead to another if we abolish policies against smoking and drinking alcohol in public libraries. Hunter didn't argue a slippery slope fallacy at all, and in fact gave direct evidence of his claims, and Jaclyn, in her arrogance and emotional blindness, has completely glossed over the evidence right in front of her face and attempted to counter back with a straw man argument. Jaclyn, I don't think the slippery slope fallacy means what you think it means. You need to reevaluate what the fallacy means.
My name is Bria. I'm 19 years old, and I'm addicted to eating sand. I just love the crunch. It's always good on top of food, like a seasoning or something. I've taken a tortilla chip, dipped them in sand, and ate them, and it gave the chip the best crunch that I've ever got in my entire life.
My name is Jennifer, and I'm addicted to eating mattresses. And sometimes hair be in there, and I have to pull it out.
Yeah, see, those examples totally make sense. So if you're a vegetarian and you don't eat meat, then the next thing is definitely going to be mattresses and sand.
Although I've just debunked this, it's still quite amusing to point out just how desperate and sad this tirade of hers really is.
Chromosomes are what give you your gender, and they cannot be changed. It doesn't matter how much testosterone or how much estrogen you get pumped into you.
That's just flat out incorrect. I've already explained that you can have an XY chromosome and be born a full-fledged female if the baby in utero has some insensitivity to testosterone. Also, you can be XX and be born a man. Chromosomes do not determine your gender. And if you insist on talking about these topics and claiming that what you're saying is fact, then maybe you should get a medical education so you actually know what the hell you're talking about.
Well, people like Dr. Paul McHugh do have an extensive medical education on things like this, but you simply fall back on your irrational personal bias and dismiss them anyway. So I think the only education you believe one should have, Jaclyn, is one which agrees with your personal worldview. Hypocrite.
And lastly, truth is, transgenders deserve rights just like everyone else, but they do not deserve extra rights.
Oh my god, this argument. This is the same shit that I've been hearing for years whenever it comes to LGBT rights. Back whenever gay marriage was not legalized, they don't want equal rights, they want extra rights, as though marriage wasn't something that straight people could do that gay people couldn't. They wanted the equal right to be able to get married.
And they did have the right to get married. They had the same right as everyone else to marry the opposite sex, and already had the legal right to get married in certain states which had already legalized gay marriage. So you are simply continuing your nonsensical desperation, Jaclyn. What they wanted was the special right to impose upon the federal government what marriage is in order that the Fed will recognize their definition of marriage. No definition of marriage, Not even heterosexual marriage was recognized on the federal level until the Scottish ruling. So get your facts straight, Jaclyn. Those who believed in marriage between one man and one woman were going around demanding the federal government recognize their status because they didn't want the federal government to be controlling marriage. The Scottish ruling allowed the government to control marriage, which served to give up a sacred liberty of ours to be dictated by the federal government instead of by private citizens. I may have to do another video on this issue at another time, but for now, let's just continue on.
Transgender people want the equal right to be able to take a shit in the appropriate bathroom. And I know a lot of people have issues with this, which is why I made a video on it earlier, where I think we should just have gender neutral bathrooms. I think that that would solve the entire problem. Who cares? A man dressing up as a woman just so that he can go into a woman's restroom and creep on women is illegal, and whether or not transgender people are allowed the equal rights that they should have does not change the fact that doing illegal shit is illegal and that you could be arrested for it. This is not in any way condoning creepers in bathrooms. And also, transgender people aren't doing that kind of thing. You do not hear stories about transgender people creeping. It doesn't happen. That's not the kind of person that you need to view as a predator because statistically, they're not.
I already did a video about these points Jaclyn brings up in my Lacey Green response video about this bathroom issue. The link is in the description if you want to check it out.
For fun, let's take a look at the bigoted comments in his comments section, and I cannot believe that this video still has more likes than dislikes. Transgender people be like, let's play dress up, because apparently cross-dressing is the same thing as transgender. I identify as carbon dioxide, so stop the hate. This is so stupid. Of course you're gonna see a bunch of I identify as random thing in the comment section below, but it's so stupid and it's such ignorant thinking and such a stupid argument. It's a non-argument. Yet 35 people were like, yeah, that's awesome.
Notice here that she didn't explain why it was a non-argument, but simply asserted it was one. It's obvious she doesn't have a valid reason why it's a non-argument.
7.5 years of Obama and people don't know what bathroom to use. Enough said. Yeah, this is Obama's fault. Thanks, Obama.
Let's not pretend that Obama didn't have a very specific agenda to radically change this country. It's what he campaigned on, and the fact is this wasn't even a debate before he became president. He even went so far as to say that the funding would be pulled from those who didn't cater to the transgender bathroom agenda. So yes, Jaclyn, you can indeed thank Obama for trying to forcibly coerce people into your social injustice agenda.
I sexually identify as and used tampons. Jesus Christ, 57 likes. 57 people saw that grammatically incorrect, stupid sentence and were like, that's awesome! Do not know how to grammar. Hence this shirt that I'm wearing. I don't know if you can see it, but it says, I'm smarter than you're. It's appropriate for that comment. Shameless self-promotion, that shirt is available on my website, jaclynglenn.com, so check it out. Hallelujah! There's one comment that I agree with. The truth about Christians like Hunter Avallone is they don't give two shits about nature, children, or people. They just want to go after whatever vulnerable group they can to bully them. There is a reason young people are leaving their churches in droves. They sure give God a bad name. You give God a bad name.
This would go into another whole video on social injustice wars continually twisting God's word in the Bible to justify their injustice agenda. But I'll just end it with this thought. Jaclyn, put away your pride, your bigotry, your arrogance, and your hate because people hold a different view than you do. That's something you social injustice warrior types need to seriously take to heart. And thanks for watching, everyone.